Chris Phillips is the Managing Director of the International Protect and Prepare Security Office. He's also the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office and a former Detective Chief Inspector of the Metropolitan Police. Welcome to the programme. First of all, why do you think it is that members of Parliament have been so much more keen to talk about anonymity online, which seems to be something completely irrelevant to the murder of Sir David Amess, and they've been more tentative when it comes to the threat of Islamism in the UK?
Social media and all the stuff that's come with it has created all sorts of problems in our society and societies across the world. But we're just not talking about the main issue here. And the main issue is that people are being radicalised and they're being put out there and being persuaded effectively to murder and kill. And what worries me a great deal, Tom, is that this is not the only murder we're going to see this year or next year. We're going to see others. And if we continue down this line of not talking about it, not actually confronting the issue itself, then we're not going to solve it.
It does shock me that after the brutal murder of Joe Cox, of course, in 2016, everyone was talking about the threat of far-right extremism. Rightly so, rightly so. A far-right terrorist killed Joe Cox, and for the next few weeks, even months, people were talking about the threat of far-right extremism. Well, since then, there have been so many Islamist attacks. There was the attack in Brixton, the attack on London Bridge, the attack on Westminster Bridge, another attack that fortunately failed on Westminster in 2019, and now the killing of Sir David Amess as well. Why are we not talking so much about Islamism when it seems to be far and beyond the biggest threat that we face from terrorism in the UK?
Yeah, and the attacks that you've mentioned, you could have included another 50 attacks in France where priests were beheaded. We've had teachers beheaded. We've had trucks driving down the road, knocking children over. So, yeah, this is a big problem. I think people are scared of it. They don't see an answer. It is a very difficult subject. We all know that, listen, that 90%, 99% of the people that actually are Muslims don't agree and don't have anything to do with this. But 1% of quite a big population is a huge problem. And this is one man that we saw, the murderer, one man, and there's 25 to 40,000 others in the UK that are of serious concern. So this is a big problem, and it is something that we should be confronting and dealing with. And we are allowing things to go on in our country and normalise. We're allowing prisons to become hotbeds of radicalisation. We're allowing people to go to strictly Islamic schools, and we're even allowing Sharia law in some of our cities to look after people and to cause issues, I think, in the future. So I think we've got to be willing to confront this, and we've got to be willing to talk about it if we're going to try and solve the problem.
You say there that people don't see an immediate answer, that this problem seems intractable. It's sort of put in the too difficult box, and we go and talk about other things. What are some of those solutions, some of those real, genuine solutions that we could be getting on with here in the United Kingdom?
Well, listen, the radical Islam is no friend of Islam itself. The vast majority of people don't agree with it, don't believe in it. And we have got to engage with those people much more to come up with the rationale as to how we identify how these messages, these perverse messages are being pushed out on the internet. We do require the internet giants who can actually do an amazing amount of weeding around their systems to deal with some of the videos that are online. We shouldn't put up with these preachers that are actually passing messages across the piece. And also we need to make sure that we don't allow Sharia law in any of our cities, in our country at all. And also our prisons. I think our prisons are a hotbed and need to be solved. That problem needs to be solved because more people are coming out radicalised than are going in.
Problem of integration in the UK, I suppose you could put it, where you have sort of communities that are very insular, that don't talk to other communities, where we don't have a broad sense of what it means to be British, of what our values are, and a sort of universalism of those values? Is that combated through schools? Is that combated through community engagement? Is that combated through bringing over those people who lead moderate mosques to be the voices in their communities rather than the extremists?
All of those things, and you're absolutely right. Integration is the key, and when people want to integrate, they can. I think there are groups of people that don't want to integrate. They don't see Western life as actually being anything they really want anything to do with, but they want to live in the country. I mean, I've got moderate friends that wouldn't marry a British Muslim. They bring them over from Pakistan because they feel that they'll be less of a problem to them.
That's extraordinary. Now, I do want to ask about the contradiction here, and potentially one of the reasons why this is so troubling and difficult to tackle. Because British values of free speech, of tolerance, seem to be up against the sort of Islamist values of intolerance, of religious control. Now, the problem here, of course, is if you want to live in a liberal, open, tolerant society, to what extent do you tolerate intolerance?
And I think that's the key point here. Is it's very easy for them to say that the extremists to say these things because they're allowed to in the UK. And there does come a time when perhaps we should moderate this and do something about it to prevent it from happening.
Legislation. But do we lose our values then? This is the question. Do we lose our values of free speech, of open societies, if we start locking people up for what they say? If it's an extreme point of view that doesn't directly incite harm, are we potentially breaching one of those fundamental founding values of Western liberal democracy, free speech?
Well, there is no free speech, actually, in the UK. There's a degree of it. There's certain things you can say and certain things. And we decide through legislation where to draw that line. When you have people like Anjem Choudhury who are going online, they're looking at video, they're making videos, they're influencing people that end up going off to kill others on a number of occasions. It will be really interesting to find out from the police when the trial comes up for this latest murder exactly what influenced this person to go out and kill. And I think we do need to look at this. There's a great deal of work that's been done to review on this, on terrorists that have actually committed murders, and we need to nip it in the bud and say that it's not acceptable in the UK or in the West. And I think France, Belgium, Germany are all undergoing the same issues. Where do you draw the line on free speech?
And actually, to President Macron's credit in France, the response to the beheading of that teacher, Mr. Paty, Samuel Paty, has been extraordinary. There have been all schools across France having sort of memorials, lessons on free speech, lessons on free expression, lauding those liberal values. Is there potentially something that we could learn from the French on this issue, who've been much, much stronger in standing up for the kind of society that they want France to be?
Yeah, well, the French have had far more terrorist attacks over the last 5 years than we have. They've suffered more, if to some extent, than we have, and I think they're really feeling it. And of course, there is a very big Muslim community in France as well. That some of which, again, that have extreme views. I think certainly we need to look at this in the whole. The Western civilization is about free speech, but you do have to draw a line somewhere, and you have to say what is acceptable and what isn't. Tom, one of the other things relating to this, and I mentioned it earlier about prisons, is we are still freeing people, really radicalised people, back into society who have already been convicted of terrorist attacks. This is just crazy, and our criminal justice system itself needs a complete overhaul if it's going to protect us. Because unfortunately, listen, I've been in terrorism pretty much since 9/11, countering terrorism, and the threat is probably bigger now than it's been in the past, and we are going to have attacks of different type over the next few years. And we've seen a MP attacked on this occasion, but it could be someone else, and it could be one of our communities. So, this is not a case of just scaremongering. This is a case of saying the threat is real. We need to do something about it. And the best way is to stop people from becoming terrorists in the first place.
That is extraordinary. You, with all your expertise and years in this field, say that the terrorism threat to us living in the United Kingdom today is higher than it was at the time of 9/11. What sort of things can we be expecting? We've seen a lot of lone wolf actors. Is there the possibility that something more organised and more dangerous could take place?
Well, of course, Al-Qaeda were all for the big attack, the huge attack with, as we saw, 9/11. That threat has moved away a little bit, and actually ISIS were pushing people to do these one-man lone attack types, lone wolf, if you like. So I think we can see, you only have to look at the figures and say that just the number of people in the UK that are a threat, the number of people that have been released from prison, and of course you've got the unknowns as well. We don't know how many people have come into the UK in the last 5 years specifically to commit terrorist attacks. And, if you do follow terrorism as I do, you'll see just recently, just last week, we had an attempted attack foiled in Spain, where there was going to be carnage if they actually managed to get through. So we're lucky in as much as our police and security services have been doing a good job at keeping us safe, at preventing these attacks. But, we're coming up to Christmas. We've got another year ahead of us. A lot of people have been sitting in their bedrooms, looking at things that they're able to see, maybe radicalising themselves in a way that we may suffer for in the future. So, I hate to pass on bad messages, really, but the threat is there and it's not going to go away in our lifetime.
That is a really, really interesting point, actually. A year of people sitting in their bedrooms without the ameliorating influence of wider society is a genuine concern. Well, this was such a vital conversation to have. Thank you so much for coming on and bringing all of your expertise in counter-terrorism to this conversation.